Well, great. Well, thank you all for the honor and the opportunity. I hope I live up to your all's expectations. At least I'll put out some things that might be a little thought-provoking. So I'm DJ Scully. D is for Donald, J is for John. I've been with Extension since 1997. My background on a bachelor level is with forestry and then at a master's level vocational education. Started off my career in Bell County in southeastern Kentucky as a traditional agriculture agent, then had the opportunity to come up to Campbell County in 2000 to occupy a new position focused on natural resources and environmental management. And you might say, well, what is that? I guess it's anything that doesn't fall in the realm of agriculture or horticulture, or some things that the agriculture or horticulture folks didn't want to do, or maybe weren't doing at the time I came up here. So I specialized in arboriculture, became a certified arborist. Do a ton of environmental education programs at our environmental education center, as well as in the schools and in the communities. And I really love getting to focus on the environmental education part of what Extension can offer to communities, because I think it has the opportunity to engage a lot with our non-traditional underserved clients, like those who live in suburban areas or urban areas, but at the same time still serving our traditional clients who have supported us for so long. So here you find my contact information. I'd be more than happy to answer any questions later if you all have any by email or phone. Here you see a beautiful pawpaw flower. This flower is near and dear to me. So as a student in the Department of Forestry in the 90s, it was mandatory that you spent your junior and senior summer at Robinson Forest. There were 8 weeks of classes for 8 credits that you had to have to graduate. And we spent pretty much every day in the field, rain or shine, cold, warm, you name it. Because as foresters and those that work in the field, you've got to go in the field in any sort of situation. I actually collected this flower back then in the summer of '96. Didn't even know what it was. Had a suspicion, had to go look it up. But this is indeed a pawpaw flower, a very fleshy, beautiful, different sort of flower, actually pollinated by flies and beetles. Beetles especially pollinated flowers a long, long time before bees ever did. So pollinators are a lot of different things besides the bees and butterflies that we're thinking about, including flies and beetles. So with that being said, we're just going to go through these trees and shrubs. These are just ones that I happen to think about. I thought might do well in your area. Also, these are nutritious and delicious. So with that being said, we'll just move on along. So why native fruit trees and shrubs? Well, as the name native implies, they're indigenous to this area for long as we can recall. Now, granted, plants do migrate, and our area has not been the same climate as it is now forever. So these are the plants that are indigenous, we would say, post-European settlement, or when Europeans came here, these are what we found to be indigenous and being utilized mostly by Native Americans at that time. And later we, adopted those ideas and learned from them. So I think general botany, most folks don't have good literacy with. So by nature, anything that makes a fruit, that comes from a flower. And every flower has pollen. You all might recognize this paper wasp at the top and this bald-faced hornet at the bottom. And if you know anything about these insects, they eat other insects, i.e. insects we don't like too much, such as bagworms and stink bugs. But in order to raise their young, they have to feed their young pollen. So the way I would make this analogy is, monarch butterflies. The larvae don't eat the same things that the adults eat. So whereas the larva of monarchs are going to eat milkweed, the adult monarchs are going to get nectar and such from other flowers. So similar way, these wasps and hornets, the adults might eat one thing, i.e. insects, whereas the kids, the babies growing up are going to need pollen in order to complete their life cycle. So that's why native fruit trees and shrubs not only work well in our environment, but they support other organisms in our environment. And I get asked this question all the time by folks, and what is it good for? Why is it here? And I really believe in answering a question sometimes with another question or a statement that provokes thought. So we know that sometimes we're not aware of a role an organism provides in an ecosystem until that organism's gone. And then we realize why that organism was important in that ecosystem. So in this case, we can make the connections between the pollen, the flowers, and the native fruit trees and shrubs and their importance to insects. Sometimes it's more difficult to see the connections, but they're always there. And that's our role as scientists and educators to figure those out and make them seem simple. So their beauty, because these things not only have attractive fruits, but also have, in many cases, attractive flowers, can enhance your landscape and property. And by the nature of it being a fruit and coming from a plant, and let's not forget, plants are indeed producers. They produce their energy. We're consumers. We have to get our energy from them. But it's marvelous to think about how we get minerals from plants, especially from fruits. Now, these minerals mostly come from the soil, from decaying organic matter. These minerals are absorbed by roots as these roots absorb moisture. And there's an old saying that the most important fertilizer is water, because no mineral can be extracted from soil unless it's in a water-soluble form and taken up by the root in that manner. So we get those minerals in our bodies when we consume producers because we are indeed consumers and we need those from producers. And then at the end, the decomposers always win, but recycle those nutrients back in the earth. So it's all a beautiful cycle. Let's see what's next. Okay, the first one that is ripening as we speak, probably is just about ripe enough to eat, but I'll warn you, do not eat this thing before it is dark orange. It will make you pucker. It's very astringent. And if you don't believe me, you can try, but you will pucker. When it is a dark, dark orange, maybe even turning to a little bit of a purple color, especially after the first frost, it is absolutely delicious. Now, persimmons get to be large trees, up to 60 feet tall, about 20 to 30 feet wide, about as half a wide as they are tall. Now, this is an unusual tree, or not unusual, but I'll just say this, that they come in males and females, and that term is called dioecious, meaning two houses. So if you're going to buy persimmons, you need to buy a couple. Very rarely, and I've never seen this at nurseries, will they'll actually tell you if they're male or female, because many times they sell them before they know if they're male or female, and sexing them by the flower is possible, but can be difficult to the untrained person. So normally buy at least three, maybe five. So the flowers here are going to be white to greenish and kind of shaped like blueberry flowers. They're going to bloom in April, and then you get this awesome fruit, which ripens in September and October. And the skin does begin to wrinkle a little bit. You can eat this skin, no problem. There are seeds inside that you'll want to spit out. Now, a little bit more about persimmon nutrition. They have a lot of fiber in them, as well as vitamin A and C and B vitamins. They're a really good source of fiber, as I mentioned before. They taste a great deal like dates when they're dried. They're used to make cakes and puddings. Also, beverages, as you'll see mentioned here. I've actually had wine made from persimmons, and Native Americans even used them to make bread and dried them. So you can use their seeds as a form of cooking oil that kind of resembles peanut oil and I should say taste. And another old kind of wives' tale and folklore about persimmons is that if you slice open the seeds and look at the inside of the seeds, it will forecast the winter weather. If it looks like a fork, it means it's just going to be a little bit of snow. If the inside of the seed looks like a spoon, it's going to have we're going to have a lot of snow. You're going to have to get out that snow shovel and plow to get that snow away. And then if the inside looks like a knife, it means it's really going to be a windy winter. Now, I'll be honest with you. I don't know how true that is, but it sounds kind of good. But more importantly, those seeds are really slippery and slick. So make sure you dry those suckers off before you try to cut them up. And I don't want anybody getting a cut on their thumb or finger from trying that experiment. So here we go with mulberries. Mulberry is another great tree. Now, I'll be honest with you. Most of the mulberries that you have around your property are probably the what we would call the non-native, but not invasive, according to most specialists. They're naturalized. So what's the difference? In order for a non-native species to be invasive, it has to alter the ecosystem in which it lives in. We don't believe that mulberry are doing that quite to the extent that other species like tree of heaven or emerald honeysuckle are doing. But there are mulberries that are native, such as the red mulberry, and there are also black mulberries out there. Mulberries are the food source for the silkworm that gives us silk, and that's actually how a lot of the white mulberry came into New England and North America years ago. They contain high amounts of iron and vitamin C and decent amounts of potassium and vitamin E and K. And for the plant lovers out there, mulberries are one of the few trees that exhibit different shaped leaves on the same tree. There's a little bit of research being done out there about the medicinal benefits of mulberry with respect to diabetes treatment. So, many of these plants have benefits that maybe we've not uncovered yet or don't know enough about. Here's the pawpaw fruit on the top right, as well as the beautiful broad leaves and likely also gorgeous flower there. They're going to be no more than about 20 feet tall at maturity, and they're going to have a similar spread. So pawpaws have quite a few nutritional benefits associated with them, such as manganese, and they have quite a bit of potassium in there, calcium, niacin, B vitamin, zinc. Their nutrients in pawpaws are similar to those found in bananas and apples and oranges. It does resemble kind of a cross between several flavors like a banana or a mango. And they have this nickname of the Kentucky banana or American custard apple. But I'll caution you that the skin is not edible, and to the extent that there's not a deer-proof tree, but there are some trees that deer don't necessarily prefer, and pawpaw is one of those trees. There's actually an article I read recently about pawpaw increasing in density in New York. They believe due to deer predation of other understory shrubs that deer tend to find more favorable than pawpaw. And I have found that to be true in my 20 plus years in Campbell County, where we have a lot of deer pressure, particularly in the northern parts of the county, that pawpaws seem to be thriving and increasing in density more and more. So here we have a serviceberry, a tree that you all may be aware of. It's a very early blooming shrub here in Kentucky. A lot of myth around the name being that it comes from the serviceberry, service being that when it bloomed, there could be, let's just say, church services, i.e. funerals that couldn't be had in the winter, marriages, other things of that nature. There's some debate about if that's accurate. There's some other discussion that it could be a loan word, a borrowed word from sorbus. Sorbus is the genus of mountain ash, which is a common species in Appalachia that has a red berry. So regardless, this is Amelanchier. And I'll say this, if you're out there looking for these trees and shrubs or any plant, look for it and buy it by the scientific name, which is going to be in Latin. As I introduced myself earlier as DJ Scully, my given name is Donald John Scully. Could be Donnie to some, Donald to others, D to just a few. So not really going to know who you're dealing with or what you're buying unless you buy it by the scientific name. And the cultivars do matter. So you'll see that particularly with the serviceberry in a bit, where if you buy one called an autumn brilliance and you don't want a multi-stem plant, but you want a single stem tree, then you bought the wrong cultivar. You should have bought cumulus. So the cultivar, the name and a single quotation after the genus and species will tell you a lot more about what that plant's going to look like. Here you'll see these dark berries that ripen in June. The tree is also nicknamed Juneberry. They are delicious right off the plant, but can be used for a wide variety of things. And the fall color on certain cultivars is absolutely stunning. This beautiful apricot color that I call it. So here's the autumn brilliance on the right. It's a multi-stem cultivar compared to the cumulus on the left, which is a single stem cultivar. Both of these plants will do good in full sun, partial shade, maybe even virgin on, full shade, full sun, perhaps not the best, but do well in a wide variety of types of places. So the nutrition there is really good for you, basically. Kind of like blueberries in a way. A lot of iron in these things. I find it ironic that a lot of these minerals that are in these native fruits, if you will, super fruits, are the same minerals that are in a lot of immune boosting medicines that people take when they feel a cold coming on or trying to shorten the duration of a cold. If we make sure that we have plentiful minerals and vitamins in our bodies, it helps boost our immune system. And, that also pertains to things that we know a bit about, but maybe don't know as much about as we would like to with respect to antioxidants and things of that nature. So regardless, all of these fruits have those things in them. So as we learn more, we'll be able to determine just how healthy these things are for us. A wild plum is one that is not known to many. Prunus, the genus, is a large genre of plants, many flowering species, also many edible fruits. This wild plum is one that I became familiar with a few years ago. We bought some seedlings from the Division of Forestry to do a reforestation project, and wild plum was actually in the mix. And years later, I found a small tree with fruit on it, and I was like, "What's that?" And it indeed was a wild plum, and ate it, and was delicious. They're not quite as good as other types of edible plums. Are usually used in jams and jellies, but I did enjoy it. The nice thing about these native fruits too is that there's not going to be a lot of insect and disease pressure that's going to make the crop, a failure. These things are used to growing in our environment. They're used to the diseases and insects that are around here. So that's a little bit of an advantage that the natives have over the ones that are not native for our area. These fruits don't get that big. They're not more than about an inch in size, and they ripen earlier in the year, more back in like July and August. So if many of these things like this wild plum, it's going to contain about the same sort of nutrients that are in other plums you buy at the grocery store or buy orchards or things of that nature. And most of these things, with the exception of that pawpaw, which we don't want to eat the skin of, most of these things we actually do want to eat the skin. The skin is going to be a source of a lot of these things, like the beta carotene and the copper and manganese and potassium. Now, here's one that I want to point out that is found in a lot of different places. It's in a lot of medicinal remedies and auto immune system improving sorts of powders and pills and gummies and things. But this is one that we cannot eat raw. We have to make sure that this thing is cooked. I've even found pawpaw juice in coffee shops and things that folks are selling and making sure they're preparing it correctly. But we want to make sure that we get the toxins out of this thing by cooking it before we eat it. So therefore, since we have to cook it, we're never going to eat elderberry raw. I've even seen elderberry extract in beer, and elderberry has a lot of great things in it. It has a lot of antioxidants, and most of these dark fruits do, and quite a bit of fiber and vitamin C. But again, don't eat elderberry raw. Chokeberry, aronia, is probably I guess, a superfood, if I could call it. You'll see here it has even more benefits than blueberry and elderberry. Not known, but aronia is a genus of chokeberry. I believe there are two types of aronia, red and black. These make a nice, larger shrub. They can get up to 8, 10, 12 feet tall at maturity, but do really well and can even be pruned to a smaller size. So the research has shown that these aronia have even more antioxidants than blueberries and elderberries. And those antioxidants that we have not gone into a lot yet reduce the chance for what we say from studies, cancer, heart disease, inflammation, diabetes, so on and so forth. So they are kind of astringent, a little bit of a pucker to them. So some people like that. You think about wine, kind of has that puckery taste. So it has a similar kind of pucker feel to it. But likewise, it is even made into wine and mixed with grape wine and blended to make grape wine from grapes, I should say, excuse me. So here's some sources if you wanted to find out more about where to find these plant materials. There are sources available through the Native Plant Societies and local and online nurseries. Again, I would just urge you to search for these by the scientific name, and you're going to ensure that you're getting what you look for. So the first thing when you plant a tree or a shrub is you want to base the plant that you pick on the location. So you might have seen some trees or shrubs here that you liked. Most of these are going to do better and produce more fruit if they're in, a full sun environment. But please take in size the space that they're going to require. If you like a persimmon, but you don't have a lot of space in your yard, with respect to how close to the house you are, or if you have overhead utility lines, you're probably not going to want to plant something that gets 60 feet tall. You might need to go with something that gets much, much smaller, like a pawpaw or one of the shrubs. So with respect to these trees and shrubs, and with respect to anything you plant, we should always take into consideration the site and let the site have a huge factor on what we pick. With planting trees and shrubs or any woody plant material, the biggest thing is the depth. And we only know if the tree is planted at the correct depth by finding the trunk flare, also known as the root collar. So as a tree trunk goes into the ground, naturally is planted by Mother Nature, you're going to find a flare. This is where the trunk widens to form the root system. Many, many times when we buy a tree, we don't see that trunk flare, and we don't know where that's located. So we're really guessing about how deep to put the plant in the ground. So feel free to get soil away from that trunk when you buy a plant that's in the container, or you buy a plant that's balled in burlap. Identify that flare. So then the depth of the hole basically is going to be the depth or the height from the trunk flare to the bottom of the root system. So that's how deep we dig the hole. How wide we dig the hole is at least 2 times the width of the root ball. And I'll pull something back up here in a minute that'll kind of show how this works, a little picture with respect to showing the trunk flare and also showing the depth of the hole. What's really important when we plant a tree or shrub that we don't often do is we want to add things to the soil we take out. Or a lot of people just want to completely replace the soil that's taken out of the hole. And that's a big mistake, because with these trees and shrubs, their root systems are going to expand well beyond the hole we plant them in. And these trees and shrubs are going to have to be used to and get used to the soils that are outside the planting hole. So if you put amendments or you replace the soil in the planting hole, you're really just setting yourself up for not the best success. So get a piece of plywood, get a wheelbarrow, get a tarp, and as you excavate soil from the hole, put it on that tarp or that piece of plywood, and then break that soil up as much as possible, and just very small sizes, about the size of a pea or marble. And if you can't break up the soil and the size of a pea or marble, then you're going to discard that soil, because you're not going to need nearly as much soil that you take out of the hole as you're going to put back in the hole, because 50 to 75% of that hole is going to be occupied by that new tree. So next, number 5, we're going to remove all plant materials from the root ball. So if I told you that burlap that's on that balled and burlap root ball will decompose, that is true, but that burlap, it's going to take a long time to decompose, and those roots really don't want to have to mess with that burlap, and that burlap's going to wick water away from those roots. So foreign materials include everything from the containers to burlap, wire cages, rope, and twine. Sometimes it can be very, very difficult to get the burlap off of the root ball, especially if there's a wire cage. If you found that to be the case, it's a necessity at least to get the burlap off the top of the root ball and as far down the sides as possible. So I know there's situations that aren't ideal, and we have to make the best we can do, so to speak. So if you can't get it off entirely, just get it off the top and the sides. But I would much prefer you to get it off completely. You're going to place the tree in the hole number 6. The tree's at the correct depth when the trunk flare is level with the ground. After you walk away from the tree and look at the tree, you should be able to see the trunk flare. This is true on a tree or a shrub. If you don't, you planted it too deep. Now, if you plant it too high, there's an old expression, plant too high, sure to die. So you can get the trunk flare too high. You can get the root collar too high. There's a sweet spot right there where that flare needs to be at grade. Then you can apply some mulch to it. I would recommend 2 to 3 inches of mulch, organic mulch. This is mulch from pine bark, pine straw, pine fines, cypress. I don't care so much for inorganic mulches. Inorganic mulches are things like shredded rubber, rock. Why don't I like those? Well, that usually is used in accompaniment with weed fabric, landscape fabric. Folks, it's called weed fabric for a reason. It doesn't grow weeds. If it's not going to grow weeds, it's not going to grow trees. Keep your weed fabric and landscape fabric away from your tree roots. They might do a good job at making your landscaping look pretty, but they're no friend of tree roots. You have to get a rain gauge to monitor precipitation. I don't want you to feel like you have to go out and buy a fancy rain gauge. I picked this up a couple years ago. It's the tuna can method for measuring rain. A can of tuna fish emptied is right about an inch deep. You don't have to use a can of tuna fish. You can use a Tupperware container or anything that's about an inch deep. You put that out there in the yard by your newly planted tree or shrub. You monitor it weekly if we get any rain. If we don't get any rain, water with a sprinkler. Don't use the hose placed by the base of the tree. That will water a limited area very deep, but won't water very wide. Not only do you want to water where the roots are, you want to water where you want the roots to grow. So we really need to move to watering with a sprinkler or something of that nature. That allows us to monitor how much water we're putting on. Aim for an inch a week for the first year or so. And even if we get into droughts like we did this year with larger, mature trees and shrubs, watering cannot be overstated. So get into the habit of using some sort of rain gauge to monitor how much moisture you're putting down. So I'm going to close this out, and I want to pull something back up that I didn't get to share earlier. Okay, here we go. So if you all can see this screen is showing a balled and burlap tree. There's burlap on the outside of this root ball here, and it has a wire cage that secures the root ball, and there is twine tying the wire cage to the trunk and back around to the wire cage. So we ideally want to remove all of this material before we plant the tree, so the roots aren't don't have any barrier, I should say, between them and the soil they want to grow in. Here's an example where you really don't see the flare when you buy the tree or the plant. So here it shows how we're excavating with the trowel. We're using the hand pruners there as a indication of just how much soil was piled on top of the root system. There are some reasons why this occurs. When the plants are grown in the field and they're dug by spades, soil sometimes just gets naturally piled on top of the root systems, or the plants may have been started too deep to begin with. So this excavation of the soil that's excess and on top of the root ball, we want to get off. This is going to ensure that we get the plant positioned at the right depth or seated to the right depth. Here in the diagram, you'll see it shows that the hole is at least 2 to 3 times the width of the root ball. In this example here, they did not completely remove the burlap. They got it off the top of the root ball as well as several inches of the side. You can see here how the flare is positioned right at the surrounding grade. And it's not always a necessity to guy and stake a tree. But if you do stake or guy a tree to keep it upright and from blowing over, it's really important you don't keep that on more than one growing season, because research has shown that if you install it too tight or you keep it on too long, the tree will kind of use that as a crutch and not develop as strong of a root system as it should. Be careful with trunk wraps. Trunk wraps can be very important sometimes when you have high deer populations to prevent rubbing damage. But you need to make sure that they have a way to expand with as the tree girth expands, and not girdle those trees. Or in many cases, if you use black corrugated plastic, which is the wrong material to use, the heat that's trapped in between there and the bark can cause the bark to blister. And I've even seen voles, which is a small mammal, build nests in between the black plastic and the tree. So if you're going to use a trunk guard, use something that is very breathable, like a black plastic fencing material that has about a half an inch gauge that the wind can blow through. You can cut that to the length you need to go up to the first branch and secure that with zip ties. A lot of the trunk guards you buy online or at garden centers are white and they're perforated and they kind of wrap around the tree. Or if you had to buy something at a hardware store, you could use corrugated plastic, but I would want you to make sure it's perforated. That means it has holes in it, and make sure it's white to reflect the sun's reflective energy. Oftentimes I found that drilling additional holes in those plastic corrugated pieces with a large drill can help ensure airflow. But trunk guards can be helpful sometimes if you have a lot of deer browsing. So with that being said, I think I went through everything that I had to share about native fruit trees and shrubs, as well as a little bit of information about how to plant these things. And I'd be more than happy to answer any questions that you all have.